we would have frontline leaders before they would make a decision on their own. They would check in with their boss, and their boss would check in with their boss, and are we doing this right? So you got people standing around wondering what's going on. And did I do it right? Did I do it right? Now what we are seeing is that these higher leaders understand that their job is to allow these lower level leaders to make decisions on their own, to be included in decisions before they are made. And the gratitude and the growth in the frontline leaders has been exponential.
Andrea, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me.
How you been?
Busy, very, very busy. I think that, this year has been really, really crazy. Everyone thought that things would slow down once we got to normal with COVID, and that has not happened.
Yeah. And
So,
in the nature of the work that you do, is this time of year just very busy because of the work that you do?
yeah, it's a combination. So I support a manufacturing facility
Yeah.
primarily. And in our company, we take the end of the year and sort of slow production down.
Mm.
And that gives us an opportunity to do some maintenance and things like that. So it's actually just a little bit slower than it normally would be. And it will certainly kick back up full steam ahead in January.
Yeah.
But leading up to what we call shutdown, it was very, very busy.
How long you been with the company?
I've been with the company for about 18 years. I've been supporting the manufacturing business for about five.
Wow, 18 years. What did you
18
did you start in
years.
HR?
I actually did start in HR, not here. So I've been working in HR for about over 30 years, over 31 years now.
Are you one of the few
Um,
people that actually chose HR as a career?
I, I did.
Yeah.
I chose HR. I did. And I will tell you, I got a lot of heat for that. I got a
By the
lot of heat for
family or like
not so much by
friends?
I think my family was just happy that I was going to school and pursuing a job.
Okay.
But when I told people that I was going into what I was calling human resources
Hmm.
very early, I would get reactions like, "You're going into personnel with, the face. You're going into
That was the
personnel."
reaction back then, yeah.
Well, I have an MBA. I started out with a business degree in finance, and I have to tell you, I really tried, and that just didn't stick with me.
You're like, no. Yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't. It
It's
just didn't
funny
stick.
how you have to go through it to realize it's
You
not for you.
do, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And so I decided to go back to graduate school and I was majoring in marketing, but took an elective in human resources and absolutely fell in love at that. And at that moment, I knew that that was going to be the career that I'd pursue because in graduate school, you do a lot of case studies and things like that. And from an HR standpoint, HR management, HR principles, HR thought leadership permeates every aspect of the business. And it is the one function where you actually have to know the business across the enterprise to be effective in your craft. And
Mm,
that was exciting to me. I chose it and it was hard to get into HR, to be honest. It's not easy to get into HR brand new
yeah.
for some reason. But I'm so happy I got that opportunity.
What about now? Do you think it's easier or harder?
Maybe not harder. I would say finally more is expected of the profession, which is a great
So you
thing.
mean harder in terms of what the expectations are and the skill
Yes.
requirement? Yeah, it's completely different.
Yes.
If we look at the skills
Yeah.
that were, if we had a top 10 skills you needed when you started to now, it would probably be completely different, right? There'll be like
I
two or three things that'll be on there. Like
yeah,
you wouldn't have
I think
analytics
so.
on there, for example.
You would not. Yeah, you
Data
certainly
driven,
wouldn't.
data driven wouldn't be on
That's right.
there.
It would not have been on there. You're
Yeah.
exactly right. Although I was very lucky in that early on in my career, first of all, having the MBA I thought was very, very helpful. I would not recommend, this is going to maybe sound blasphemous or maybe heresy in some ways, but I would not recommend that a person pursuing education in HR do anything other than a business degree, especially an
I think
MBA. Like
everyone
I
would
would
agree
not
with that now. If anything, so my wife's sister was doing a HR like a degree, like a master's thing,
yeah,
and like 90% of what they were teaching in it was just so out of date. Like, or not even relevant, if that makes sense. So, like, I was looking
yes.
at the course material and I was like, this is not going to prepare you.
That's
I was
that's
like,
right.
this
That's
is,
exactly
and
right.
I was like, they're still teaching this to this day, and they're still,
Yeah.
charging a lot of money actually. What's been would you say has been your biggest personal challenge in terms of how you've had to evolve as the profession's evolved?
I think that my biggest challenge has been working. You're going to think that I'm an HR curmudgeon, but I think my biggest challenge has been working with HR practitioners who are stuck in the old
Interesting.
definition of HR, and so trying to convince folks who may be stuck in the old paradigm of HR don't understand what the work is, And so to try to convince people what the work is hard. Show me a something, show me a thing, show me a widget, when really HR professionals need to be way more involved in influencing the decisions that leaders have to make. HR does not run the business, the leaders do. And so the work is in influencing them to make the right decisions based on the right information that you are bringing to them. It's not necessarily the widget. The widgets have to get done,
Yeah, of
um,
course.
but that's not the main work.
It's so interesting to say because my last interview, I asked the same question, and the leader said that it was his biggest challenge was becoming good at influencing and selling. So he was like, he realized in order to get stuff done and basically move from being an order taker to a strategic
Yes.
partner, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
And he said that was his biggest challenge.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
But if you understand the business and can influence and help other people make the right decisions and know that that is the work and find comfort in that being the work, it can be very fulfilling. You just got to keep going back. Don't quit.
Yeah. And to your point, then after that, it's do I have the right skills in my team?
Yeah.
To your point, because
Yes.
and so am I developing those competencies and skills in my team as we evolve at the
That's
same
right.
time, as opposed to having those people that are stuck in the old way of working, right? So
Yeah.
I see that a lot. Like again, if you look at some of the skills that exist in the sort of modern HR teams now, those are roles that didn't even exist.
That's exactly right.
I've spoken to CHROs recently that are hiring prompt engineers in their team. You're like, what do you mean? Why do you have a prompt engineer in your team? Well, now we're working so much with AI that we're building those self-serve tools that we need a prompt engineer in the team to understand what are the questions that our employees that are asking our AI, and then how do we program the responses. And I'm like, wow, like you got a prompt engineer in the HR team. You'd never thought that would be the case.
No, but that's cool.
Yeah, right. Or the synergy between marketing and HR, how closely that's got together. So as a CHRO, especially during COVID, right? If you didn't have a good marketing strategy and a good communications strategy and that skills in your team, you would have really struggled. During hybrid and lockdown, when
that's absolutely right,
when you had to communicate. So it's been amazing to see people evolve. And as you said, if you're in HR, you got to be good at being uncomfortable and constantly evolving and upskilling. Otherwise, you ain't gonna survive long.
No, you're not. You're not.
Yeah,
you're absolutely. I would say the second hardest thing, and I don't want to miss this, is that there are business leaders who don't necessarily see the value in HR until they don't have it, and so sort of helping the business understand how you are adding value can be a little bit of a challenge when they expect you to just take an order and you say, I see that order, but that ain't a good order, sir or ma'am.
Yeah, but it's almost like you do it so well that they don't because it's working, they don't see it. Like people only notice things when they break, if that makes sense. As well, so they kind of take for granted how good they got it until it's gone, like to your point. And that's one of the things that was the inspiration behind this podcast, is I was hearing all of this amazing work happen and no one was celebrating it, and HR's not really done a great job of sharing the wins and really demonstrating the value. And that's why I started the show in the beginning. I was like, I want to highlight some of the incredible work that's being done in these companies and sharing those best practices, and hopefully that can then the ripple effect throughout the world and the community. And that was one of the main things. I would hear about it, but I was like, no one's talking about this. Like, this is amazing work that's being done. So
thank you for that, by the way. Your podcasts are great.
No, it's fine. I in the beginning, it was quite hard to get people to come on and actually talk about it. That was the hard part. 7 years ago, it wasn't as easy now. But I think most leaders and companies are actually now pushing their HR leaders to become front-facing, especially when you think about your employee brand, right? You need to, people need to understand who am I going to work for or with.
We will know we've made it when CHROs begin to be highly sought after for board of director positions.
They are seeing that now.
Are they seeing that now?
I literally, in the last couple of weeks, I've had multiple calls about with CHROs who have just joined boards.
That's great.
And when they normally the phone call I get is, Chris, I'm thinking about leaving. do you know of any board positions? Because that's sort of the next step, if that makes sense.
That's right.
But if you look at IBM's former CHRO, she's now on many different boards and different companies. But you're right, I'm starting to see that more. And those companies and boards are understanding they need that at the table.
That's right.
Right.
That's exactly right.
And not only that, their investors are demanding that they have someone like that at the table, because they're understanding the unintended consequences of
Yes.
not having that person there with that insight and perspective. So it's been, honestly, it has been incredible to see, even in my short time that I've been in the profession, to see it evolve. It's actually been incredible. How have things evolved? So obviously, with kind of many companies are now adopting remote hybrid work models. How has that kind of worked in a manufacturing environment? Because one of the challenges is that obviously you have frontline workers that are required to be in the manufacturing sites.
You know, that's really been an interesting thing to watch. I still feel like we're a bit in the early days, but certainly from an HR standpoint, the message that I got early and often was my HR team needs to be here. A part of that is because the employees are here, and if we are sort of customer facing, which we are to employees, then we should be here. There were debates on my own team about that because we also support a headquarters office. They are not in the office, they are working remotely. And so there was this discussion, well, we can be remote too if the rest of our HR team is remote, can't we? And I think the answer to that is yes, when you earn it. Only when you earn that.
That's good. That's a really good reply. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So right now, 2023, so what, 2 full years after the pandemic, we are still in the office every day, and I will tell you, we need to be here. Can we evolve? We can, but we have to evolve with the business. It's been very difficult though, Chris, because I will tell you that trying to hire people for the jobs on my team have been difficult. It's been difficult both internally because most of the rest of the organization can work remotely. And when I say remotely, they can work in other states. And so to try to recruit even internal HR folks to come to the manufacturing facility has been challenging. And the same is true externally because there are so many hybrid remote jobs available.
There's some more opportunity now, right? That's the thing, right? It's opened
more opportunity.
Yeah. You know, I can definitely say on my own team there was some resentment. How did you overcome that?
I was lucky in some regard, and in other regards, it was very, very challenging. So I'm lucky in that I've got a good group of people who like being in the office. So that was really nice. It was more challenging to try to recruit to fill open positions where people didn't want to come.
New positions, basically.
Yeah. There have been a couple of times where there have been folks who have been sort of voluntold to do a little experience over in the manufacturing world. And those conversations were really, really difficult. But what's interesting though is that in the manufacturing facility, there are roles that are not required to be on site. I have spoken with other HR colleagues in other companies. The plant manager would say everybody has to be here. If anybody has to be here, then we all have to be here. And that's not where we evolved to. What's been very, very interesting, and it's still early days and we're figuring this out, but our plant manager will say, listen, if you can do your work without having to interact with someone, then you can maybe work from home. But if you are calling somebody and telling them to go check on something for you at the facility, then you need to be
that's
here.
Pretty like that's kind of like disrespectful in a way. Like, okay, you're at home and I gotta go and do that. It's not gonna go down well, is it? It's not gonna end well. Yeah. And I can imagine that happened quite a lot. People try to get away with it. Like, I know that this person's there, so then I can just that's not fair.
Yeah, we are finding a nice happy medium. There are some people who don't have to come into the office every day and they make it work, and that is fine because they're getting their job done. And there are others who really do need to be here. But in the middle, there's always a question that you have to ask, should I be here or not?
Well, this is one of the big challenges, right? There's no longer this one size fits all, and all of the systems and processes, everything was designed around that old way of working, right? So now you're having to kind of almost like blow it up and start again, and figure out like how do I service these different populations that exist?
Yeah.
You know, the way you're reaching and communicating with someone at home versus someone on the facility is completely different.
I'll tell you what has been very, very interesting is that we are beginning to talk about how do we provide flexibility, not necessarily remote work. You can't take a piece of equipment home and put it in your backyard. You can't do that. But how do we create a sense of flexibility for our production associates that makes sense to them? Because they are beginning to scream that they need a little bit more personal time. And so how do you do that? And it's been very, very interesting. I'll tell you some of the things that we are thinking about are things like different shift schedules, but also how do you give people more control over their own schedules. And that is much easier to say than it is to do, but we're really taking a look at it. And it requires some technology.
Of course. I think that's
It
where technology
requires
can
some,
help us.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Requires some change management. And so it's been very,
and a big
very,
culture
very, very
shift. Let's not forget.
big
Huge culture shift.
Huge culture shift at all levels.
That's a good point, right? Because the leaders themselves have that sort
Correct.
of, they're typically talent importers, not exporters, and they want to keep everyone that they can see them at the same time in the same place on the same shift schedule.
Yes.
So there's a big culture shift. What are some of the other ways? You mentioned one way. Is there some other ways you want to add to that to give them flexibility?
Well, trying to figure out how to manage giving folks a little bit more time to themselves. And so how do you do that when you're becoming more lean? We're still trying to figure that out. It's like, how do we give you more time off when we need you here? It is really thinking differently about how we work and how we give our production associates more ownership for their own work, and then allowing them to figure that out. And we're a unionized environment, which makes it even more complicated.
But what about the communication piece? How are you now communicating with frontline workers? And for example, they haven't got a computer in front of them, right? So if they want to go and figure out, what benefits do I have, what holiday do I have, all of those things, right? How are you? Yep. They're not going to pick up an email.
So something that we implemented recently is app, and we allow our associates to get information right from their phone via an app, which is still complicated because there's sometimes during the production hours where you can't have your phone on the floor. But the great news, which is very, very different, is that our traditional communication vehicles were televisions around certain parts of the plant, and you had to stand in front of the television to catch the messages when you could.
Yes.
So
seems crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Although that was an evolution from the poster. So.
It was. It absolutely was. Yeah. But now we are teaching our associates how to leverage, and everybody has a phone. Everybody has a phone.
You remove the friction.
Yeah. Now you can get information at home, or
when you have a break.
That's right. Yeah. So that's helping a lot. It's still changing some mindsets, because we do have a few folks that only have a flip phone and will tell you they don't have the internet.
No way.
So yes, we do.
You'd only find those people in manufacturing. Yeah. I can see them right now. Everyone listening can see them as well.
Yeah.
Not to stereotype whatsoever.
Yeah. So everything they can get information about the business, information specifically about their area. They can do things what we might call HR operations, administrative things like change their address, change their direct deposit information.
What about things around wellbeing? Have you got anything around that you're working on?
Anything related to benefits you can now get from your phone. Nice. I'll tell you, this is one thing. I might be jumping the gun a little bit on some of the questions you have for me, but post-COVID, one of the things that we have really seen an increase on is mental health. Part of it, I maintain, is because we have done a lot of good work to remove the stigma associated with mental health, but we have a lot of resources, including a counselor on site 2 days a week, and he's utilized.
I'm not surprised as well. Have you done any work around communications to help sort of remove that stigma? I think especially in that environment as well, it's very sort of, I don't want to sort of stereotype again, but it is that type of very male dominated, we're man's men. We don't talk about our health and well-being. Yeah. Have you done a lot of work around that?
We have. And so we've always given our frontline leaders the tool to say, hey, if you got an employee that might be struggling, here are the resources, and they know how to get those. And they've always known how to get those. But what we've done in addition to that is we have put up some communication marketing materials that talk about it's okay to not be okay kind of thing. We talk about webinars that we offer. And one of the things that I saw this year, which really let me know that things are working, is when you have employees advocating for other employees and asking for resources. They're coming to us and saying, hey, I've got a colleague who needs some help. Can you help me help them? And so that is happening. Yeah.
What's some of the other things that are top of mind for you right now?
From a manufacturing environment, and I think this will resonate with some folks, is that for so long, manufacturing has been so focused on producing whatever it is we produce. And now what I am hearing is a lot more discussion among my colleagues around, and this is going to sound a bit cheesy and maybe even a bit dated, but it's less command and control and more servant leadership. This is a little old for many people, but for manufacturing,
You're
it's
not
not
wrong. Yeah,
old.
you're right. Servant leader, that's almost seems like a crazy concept in a manufacturing environment as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you
Yeah.
now wanting to feel more empowered, right? As
Yes.
opposed
Yes.
to very command and control, which is that the
Yes.
manufacturing environment. Very like punch in, punch out. This is what you do. This is what time. See you later.
That's right.
Very
That's right.
much very binary.
That's right. That's exactly right. And there was some value in that because people worked hard and played hard, and that created a sense of family and mission. But as the society has changed, we have new employees coming in saying, "I am looking for this and that." And I expect you to treat me in a particular way. And that was new for folks who have been sort of brought up through the manufacturing ranks. And I can remember when I got here 5 years ago, that I had this reputation of bringing kindler, gentler BS to the culture. But now what you see is that this is it's necessary to treat people like they are whole beings because you get twice as much from the workforce when you do that.
How crazy it is that we're only having that conversation now, though. Only now because it's being demanded. The new generation coming through are demanding that, right? They want to understand. They want to be able to understand how they can link their purpose, their values to the role, and be treated like a human being. What a crazy request to ask for. Whereas again, I'm going back to my dad. Like if I asked him, what is the mission, purpose, and values of Tate and Lyle, the company he works for, I guarantee you would have no idea what that is, and does he feel like he's how does his role and what he does impact beyond the day-to-day, if that makes sense?
Well, I would describe it a little differently here. I mean, I think here everyone sort of understood the mission, which was making the product. And so they were happy to do that. There was a sense of pride in doing that, actually. But as the industry has had to deal with new challenges, as most industries have, and as the workforce has changed in terms of their options, then it just requires a different kind of creating a different kind of condition where people can thrive. And so when you've got leaders who were very successful, and everybody felt good back then, but it's the same leaders who were applying the same formula, it was just a little bit of a pivot away from what they knew to be right that worked in their defense. It absolutely worked, but it wasn't working quite as well. I will tell you that I feel really, really good that I work for a group of people where we can, I'll just say this, duke it out sort of behind scenes, hash it out, leave that discussion and do something a little different. It takes time to do that, but that's the work, Chris. That's the work that I was talking about before.
Yeah. So what are some of the practical things then you're doing to kind of move to more of a servant leadership model?
To try to give a simple example, we would have frontline leaders before they would make a decision on their own. They would check in with their boss, and their boss would check in with their boss, and are we doing this right? And so you got people standing around wondering what's going on. And did I do it right? Did I do it right? And now what we are seeing is that these higher leaders understand that their job is to allow these lower level leaders to make decisions on their own, to be included in decisions before they are made. So we're making those small tweaks, and the gratitude and the growth in the frontline leaders has been exponential. So that's sort of a basic one. I think one a little bit more complicated is, particularly in a unionized environment, there's a tendency to look for where's the rule, where's the rule, where's the process, where's the rule.
Yeah,
and when people
really
are involved, you can take a step back, and so you have to flex a muscle that says, before you inspect the rule, let's inspect what the right thing to do here is. What is the right thing to do here? Do that first. And so changing the order of how you think about things is a small tweak, but the outcome is so much better for everybody. And so I always say that consistency is consistently doing the right thing, not necessarily consistently doing the same thing. And in order to do that well, you've got to do the work. You've got to understand what are all of the elements, what are all of the circumstances in this situation that drive toward a decision. And learning how to do that, you can get faster at it the more you do it.
But like you said earlier, these all sound like simple things, but it's not in terms of how you then embed it in the culture and make it become part of it.
That's right.
And then whenever you're thinking about a new policy, any systems processes you put in place, you've got to look it through that people-centric lens, like you're saying.
That's right.
Just because that's the way we do it doesn't mean we just keep doing it that
That's
way.
Exactly right.
And I love your point about the traditional makes a massive difference. There's someone on the front line to feel like, what, Chris's voice is heard.
Absolutely.
It matters. Yes, I may be doing this task, but in the bigger picture, my voice matters, and it's being demonstrated and reflected in the actions and the decisions that are being made. That's huge for morale, for me, sense of purpose, and goes back to your point of them feeling part of it, right?
That's right.
As well. So that's something, again, a big culture shift. As well, that needs to take place. And that's probably, you're gonna have to look at that all the way from the very beginning of the hiring process, and look for each of those different steps through that lens as well, to make sure it feels human centric, people centric, as they go through the employee experience. So it's amazing. It must be really exciting for you. Like, it's a great opportunity to really take a fresh look at each of those moments that matter, let's say.
Yep. And the reason it matters even more now, Chris, is because as we think about the challenges, again, everyone in the industry right now has challenges, and that's just a part of it, but more is going to be expected of all of us as a team. And so the more we can respect one another and value one another and what we bring to work, the more we are able to conquer challenges together in a much more effective way.
Yeah.
And there's going to be, I said all that to say there's going to be even more challenges. And so if we can't get the basics right, then we're not going to get the big stuff right either.
One of the things that I've seen, really random question, but one of the things that I've seen for frontline workers or blue collar workers is sometimes the recognition piece gets overlooked because they're not front and center. You're not seeing them face to face perhaps every single day. And I spoke to different, workers that have been in a role for 10 years, and their 10-year anniversary, they get an automated email saying great job. They're not maximizing those moments that matter. That makes sense. How do you look at that in terms of reward, recognition, and making people feel like they're valued in that sense?
I'd have to say that here I'm lucky that has not really been an issue. We have all kinds of recognition that happens sort of intrinsically in small ways and in big ways. And so one of the things that it's probably been about 2 years now that we released to our employees, and they are really using it, is something that we call that they're these snap points. And so you can award a point to your own colleague for something that you thought they've done well, and you create a bank, and after a while you can buy some things with your points. And so we've rolled that out recently, but before that we always sort of honored in a really big way service. Not only does it get posted and blasted all over the plant, but before COVID, we used to have service recognition awards and things like that. So we've always done a good job with that here, and I think that we're continuing to do that through technology.
Again, we can scale it, right? And help.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right, and put it directly into the hands of every employee, as opposed to waiting in the past. Your leader has to do it.
That's what I mean as well. Again, it all feeds into what you're trying to achieve of making people feel like they're part of something bigger.
That's right.
Bigger.
That's exactly right.
Letting the people that work with them, around them every day, and also that I also want to be recognized by those people closest to me, right?
That's right.
It's great getting a message from, the head office somewhere for my 10 years, but for people that I live and breathe and work with every day, that's what kind of means the most. Is that also an app that they can do it on their phone?
It is an app.
Yeah. That's great. No, of course, right? You got to do it.
It is.
Yeah, again, just make it easy, right? Remove the frictions on the phone. I can go in, I can allocate points, and they can, I'm assuming, just at the end of the year use the points and buy something. Like it just like connects to like an Amazon type thing where they can just buy.
That's right.
Oh, is it literally Amazon? They can literally buy something on Amazon?
It's not Amazon, but it's like that.
Similar thing, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing that. I know it sounds like a really obvious thing, but I can tell you the amount of companies I speak to, very large companies like your own, that still don't have something like that, or they do, but it's like in an intranet somewhere.
There's one thing that I do want to say about the culture change that we've had to affect with all of this good stuff, but I will tell you, I made an error early on, and someone may be able to benefit from this. But when I got here, I realized that the culture needed to change a little bit, and I thought that I needed to empower the frontline leaders. And so I started with how do I empower these leaders to feel like they have more decision rights, that they have more accountability, that they have more skills, that they have more tools to be more effective in their role. And while I was right that they affect the majority of the employees in the business. I was right about that. What I missed was that I needed to start with their leaders and their leaders' leaders. And we needed to be on the same page about the change that needed to occur. And so I was pushing something uphill, and I didn't begin to see success until I started having the same conversations, honest conversations with the highest leaders in the organization about what I saw that needed to change. And that was not easy because these leaders didn't see anything wrong with what they were doing, which was they were seeing the results of production, and they were running the numbers from production
seeing
wise.
Numbers, right? Yeah, the numbers are good.
Yeah, the numbers are good. Then we're good. What are you talking about? But they didn't understand what I was seeing from employees and frontline leaders, and I realized that I had to do more work at the top. So I just wanted to say that for someone who might benefit, who's listening, that you really do have to.
That's a really good point, right?
Yeah,
you don't see the burnout in the numbers.
Yeah,
you know, you might, and also, like, to your point, you could empower those leaders, right? And they might see it as, oh, that's just more work I've got to do now.
Right.
I'm already busy. My boss is telling me all these things.
That's right.
You're telling me I can make decisions this way, but they're telling me this.
That's exactly right.
Right. So
that's exactly
now
right.
I'm stuck in the middle.
That's exactly
of
right.
two competing narratives. So I can see how your intentions obviously were very positive to be able to do that, but it results in you haven't made a change at the top. So now you no, it makes sense. And I think that's a great. Thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure there's many people that will make a similar assumption. But again, you learn by doing, right? You know,
that's right.
Along the way, that's one of the things that sometimes people are paralyzed by the fear of failure. They don't make any changes whatsoever. But you learned that you learned a lesson, you pivoted, and you made changes, and that's what matters.
Keep going. That's right.
There's no such thing. Remember back in the day when we had these like 3 to 5 year plans? It almost seems it seems crazy, right? Like in this day and age, in this volatile world, do you think your 3 to 5 year plan is gonna change next week?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
As well. So you have to build lean principles into everything that you do and be agile. You know about lean and agile in manufacturing.
Yes,
that's literally that's right. It's embedded in everything.
That's exactly right.
Before I let you go, parting piece of advice. You know, what advice as we move into 2024? Kind of what advice would you give to those leaders that will be sitting in your seat one day, right? The HR leaders of tomorrow.
There's actually two things. One is that as an HR practitioner, the one thing that you need to be thinking about to be successful in your job is knowing the business. I have to tell you, I cringe when I hear HR people say that they went into HR because they like people. You better love the business, because the only way that you can be effective with the human capital strategies and the leaders in the organization is by how much effort you put in absolutely knowing the business. So that's the first thing that I'd say. As a leader, some advice that I got early in my career from a leader that has carried me to this day is that as a leader, I can learn from anybody, and you have to be willing to learn from anybody. Because if you think you know it all, you're already not effective.
No, you're 100% right. And to your point about the business, if you really care about people, that's your best way to do it.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So So if that is your answer, great. But the best way you can influence and help those people is to understand the business. So anyway,
that's right.
It works that way. And and you have to be humble, right? Like well, and have humility to learn from everyone. I love that advice as well.
Yeah.
It's not always the best. It's the best idea wins.
That's correct.
As well.
No matter where.
Yeah, no matter what. Even when I don't agree with it.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Even when I don't agree with it, I had the same conversation today with my co-founder. I didn't agree with his decision, but I was like, "You own it. I trust you. This is why here. Go and do it. Otherwise, why did you hire them?"
That's exactly
you hired them for the diversity of thought and perspective and insights as well. So listen, honestly, I'm glad we made this happen. I feel like it's
me too. Holidays and all. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you. I love your energy. I love your passion. Clearly, you're in the right place. You chose the right career to be in it. And I wish you and the family happy holidays, and I look forward to chatting in the new year.
Same to you. Thank you so much.